My name is Rick Seireeni. I'm a brand architect and a brand consultant. Aside from that, I've written a book, and the book has this strange title, The Gort Cloud. And my publisher has asked me to remind you that the book is available for sale downstairs at the Lafayette bookstore in the Ecollection area. And I'm happy to sign one for you. Let's see, there must be like 40 of you here, so I'll check to make sure that 40 copies sold by the end of the day. So before we get started, I'm going to draw some assumptions. I'm going to assume that the people here are interested in fashion and that you're also interested in the environment, and you're trying to figure out maybe how to reconcile those two interests. And this concept, this Gort Cloud concept, may be able to help you, especially if you're an aspiring business owner or want to get into manufacturing of green or sustainable clothing. So, what is this Gort Cloud? Well, aside from having a kind of strange name, it's a business tool. And it's a business tool that's essentially been hidden in plain sight. And I discovered it when I first started doing research on this book. And I'll give you a little bit of background on this. I started this project about 2 years ago. And as a senior brand and marketing guy with 2 young children, so I'm a geezer dad, I was trying to figure out how to reconcile my passion for the environment and trying to hand this earth off to my own children in some kind of decent state, and also use my experience and my knowledge from 3 decades of doing brand consulting and marketing and try to bring those two worlds together. So I got on the phone and I called up the top green companies in the U.S. and asked them if they would participate in interviews and share their experiences in building their brands and finding markets and getting the word out and eventually connecting with customers. And every single one of them that I called up, they all agreed to do it. And this is what's sort of amazing about this. There's an amazing transparency and willingness to share, especially among what we call the eco-pioneers. So this includes a lot of companies that you've heard of, like Seventh Generation, Ben & Jerry's, Tesla Motors, Dr. Bronner's, makes the soap. Now, he died some years ago, but his grandsons now run the company. And then there are some other companies that you might not be so familiar with, like Earth Friendly Moving, that offers a sustainable way to move from point A to point B. There's the Bonneville Environmental Foundation. Anybody heard of that? They're the founders of the carbon credit. So when you see those little stickers on the back that says I'm offsetting my SUV, this is where it started. Southern California Edison, that we don't normally think of as a green company, but it was actually headed until very recently by one of the founders of the NRDC. We have Mohawk Fine Papers, which was one of the very first paper companies in the U.S. to build a plant that was run by solar power that produced either floor grade or shop grade paper that was recycled or had 100% post-consumer waste product in it. We've got companies like Michelle Kaufman Designs. Michelle Kaufman is one of the leading designers of prefab homes, and she has a line of eco homes. So I went around the country. It took about 18 months. I enlisted the support of a neighbor. I live in Laurel Canyon in Los Angeles, and the two of us went out and kind of divided and conquered. And as we went around and started talking with these different companies, of course, the one thing I wanted to know was, what do these companies have in common? What's the common thread here? And the obvious thing was a commitment to do good and to make money, because it doesn't do any good to do good and then go out of business. So all of the companies that you see there are still in business. Some of them have been very stressed by the recent economic situation, but they're still around. And so they've done good as they can, and they've made money. So, as a brand guy, ultimately I wanted to know, how much did they spend on marketing? How much did they spend on traditional media? Things like print, broadcast, direct mail, outdoor, live media and events like this, trade shows, POS, endorsements, all the various forms of digital media. I wanted to know how much they spent in the beginning to get their brands off the ground, because typically with startups, a lot of money goes into promotion. And the answer for many of these was literally zero. Literally zero. Some of them that were venture capital funded, like Tesla Motors, had money. But even Tesla Motors never ran an ad. They hired in-house PR people and whatnot, and of course, because of the star power of the Tesla thing, they got write-ups all over the place. They got the kinds of endorsements people, die for, without spending a dime on it. So, they bought little or no advertising, little or no marketing, very little public relations aside from what they would, do themselves. And again, it depends how you describe this. And although this wasn't the kind of answer I wanted to hear, because I'm in the business of selling brand development and marketing, so to go spend 2 years talking to people and have them tell me that they'd never hire me to do anything was really not the right answer. But aside from that, there is a plus side. If you're not buying advertising, that means that you're not spewing out propaganda. If you're not buying a big marketing plan, then you probably have very little waste, because in any marketing plan, even the most finely tuned direct mail programs or click-through programs, you're still going to have a significant amount of waste. What does that mean in terms of marketing? That means that you're buying impressions for customers, to reach customers who will never buy your products. The other thing is that there was very little cost barrier. So all of these companies in the beginning, and most of these are 5, 10, 15, 20 years old, in the case of Dr. Bronner, 40 years old, all of these companies were not inhibited by the cost of modern marketing to get their products out there. Back when the green community was very small, this was important. So what did they do? As I started talking to the first and the second and the third and the fourth, there's 23 profiles and all in the book. I actually interviewed 32 different companies, but we had to winnow away some of them to get them to fit into the book. What I found was that they were all using one form or another of direct outreach to the green community. So, what's this green community? Well, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was, hippies and people into the LOHAS movement. Of course, now it's grown and it's grown and it's grown, and many people are involved in this in many different ways. So the first thing that I did when I started collecting this information is I tried to figure out a way to map this, to figure out what it looked like, this green community network. And it consists of all kinds of people with different skill sets and different abilities that have fallen into place in different parts of this green community organization, what I came to call the Gort Cloud. So we have online magazines, professional networking, trade shows. We've got green academics, NGOs, government organizations like the EPA. You've got the certifying groups. For the ones who were here for the previous presentation, we heard about certifying groups, especially for the apparel industry. So we have all these kinds of people who will supply support, including green VC sources, investment capital. Some in the Silicon Valley area, some in the Portland, Oregon area. There are even green banks where you can get a loan if you start a sustainable business. So you have all that on the support side, and then looking upstream to your suppliers, you make all these connections to green suppliers and people who get certification so you don't have to, and whatnot to make the job easier. And then downstream, you have distributors, e-tailers, retailers, and ultimately end users and customers. So this is the Gort Cloud. It's, as I said earlier, it's mostly free. It's not entirely free, but it's mostly free. It takes a lot of elbow grease to get out there and make the connections and figure out the best way for you to penetrate and find friends within this organization. But there is an admission charge. And the admission charge is that you have to absolutely understand that you're sharing a common goal. And that common goal is to usher in the age of sustainability. What's the age that's going out? The industrial age, right? The age that we're ushering in, everybody here, is the age of sustainability. And it's going to take lots and lots of people making small efforts all by themselves, without government control, without being paid to do it, moving in the direction by themselves. There are two other things that the green community requires. One is that you have to be truthful. We've heard of greenwashing. The green community, the Gort Cloud, has a kind of peer review process that sits over the top of it. Because everyone's connected by the internet, and there are all these news organizations and bloggers and academics and research people looking at all these things, if you make a false claim, then you're going to be vetted out. And we saw this happen with Swifter and BP and lots of people. The other is that your business practices have to be transparent. The tradition for businesses, particularly in this country in the past, is that you keep everything under wraps. All your books are under wraps, your processes are under wraps, how you make things are under wraps. Everything's a secret. That doesn't work in this business, because people want to know, they want to know what it is that you're doing that's green and sustainable. So you've got to get it out in the open. So those are the three things: common goal, truthful claims, and transparent business practices. So how does this apply to the apparel industry? The Gort Cloud can help apparel companies find sourcing. It supplies technical information. It can produce partners and even investors. It can point you toward compliance and certification organizations. It, as I mentioned before, it can produce a de facto marketing plan and can produce, if done the right way, tons of exposure. And I might mention one thing right here, is that just having a green company does not make you immune from all the forces that apply to a non-green company. You have to have a good product, people have to want it, it has to be priced right. You don't get a free ride on those things. But if you're green and you plug into this, your cost of marketing can go down, and you're talking to the choir. There are also trade shows and events like this one. There are countless directories and lists of retailers where you can find a source to sell your products. And of course, there are customers. So I've just pulled up a few examples, and again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. In the sourcing area, we have sustainablecotton.org and NatureWorks. One supplies sourcing options for sustainable cotton, and the other provides sourcing materials for biopolymers. That's just two, and there are hundreds of them out there. Technical information, Biopolymers Inc., the Center for Sustainable Fashion, which is in London, is a great source of information. Sustainable Style Foundation, Ethical Fashion Forum, or just a couple in this category. As we heard earlier, we have all kinds of compliance and certification groups. We have Labor Behind the Label. We have Oxfam, which a lot of you have probably heard of, the Fair Trade Federation, Organic Trade Association, and the Organic Exchange. We also have marketing and exposure. One of my favorites is a site called Inhabitat, which maybe some of you have heard of. Great little spots that are posted there every day. You get a mention on Inhabitat, and you're going to get sales. Style with Save Us, Eco Fashion World, Green My Style, Eco Fabulous, of course. These are just a few of the bloggers and trend spotters that are out there that help with marketing exposure. And then, of course, we have, in trade shows and events, we have Ecollection here at Magic. But we've also got Designers and Agents Green Market, the Paris Ethical Fashion Show, Earth Pledge, Future Fashion. There's a bunch of these. Lastly, retailers and directories. The Guardian newspaper publishes an ethical fashion directory that has literally thousands of resources in it. And then here locally, we've got Green Loop as a kind of an e-tailing site. So what does sustainable fashion mean in a bad economy? Things are bad, and looks like they're getting worse right now. This report was filed in GreenBiz, and it was just released a week ago, February 9th, last Monday. This report, which was compiled over the last 6 months, showed that sustainably focused companies across multiple industries outperformed non-sustainable companies on a highly consistent basis. Now, this isn't the first of these kind of reports that have come out. There have actually been many. So while they might not be doing great, they're doing better than their non-sustainable competitors. Now, here's something that we can kind of think about. This is an idea that was shared with me by Karsten Henningsen of Portfolio 2021 Investments, which is part of the Salmon Nation group of financial companies up in the Portland area. And he has this idea that we have dinosaurs and we have smarter dinosaurs. The dinosaurs are the ones that are not going to be able to make it through the ever-narrowing resource funnel that we're now experiencing. Higher gas prices, higher raw material prices. In the past, we didn't factor in the damage to the environment when we bought things. Increasingly, other companies are imposing those costs on those raw materials, which is causing the price to go up. So the dinosaurs are not going to make it through this funnel. The smarter dinosaurs, on the other hand, will. So anybody see the paper today? The auto industry is asking for another 20-something billion dollars. So I really, I had to ask myself, is the Hummer going to make it through that funnel? Probably not. Will the American car industry make it through that funnel? It's doubtful. It's really doubtful. But some companies, some smarter dinosaurs are going to make it through. So what do you want to be? Do you want to be a dinosaur or a smarter dinosaur? There is a third way. And the third way, which the more radical elements of the environmental movement say is the correct way, and I can say that I probably don't disagree, is consume less. That's the bottom line. We all have to sort of understand that the bottom line is consume less. But if we're in business and we like our fashion and we've got to move goods, this may not be something that we want to spend a lot of time talking about here today. But it does hover in the background. Whenever we talk about sustainability, we have to talk about our role in consumption. So there's a market. There's a tool to reach that market. There's evidence that green companies do better than non-green companies. What other reason do you need to start a green business? Well, because it's the right thing to do. Increasingly, people who are coming into this field are doing it because it's just simply the right thing to do. The whole reason I got involved with writing this book was not to make money. I'm certainly not going to get any clients out of it. It was just the right thing to do. So everyone asks at some point, what does the Gort Cloud stand for? In the 30 years I've been in business, I have kind of a bad habit of giving my clients very strange names for their projects. When I started my own business in the early 80s, a lot of my clients were in the apparel business. Gotcha Sportswear, OP, Ann Cole, Leon Max, and companies like Uniqlo in Japan. I named the company, did the logo for it. So coming up with kind of odd names has been sort of maybe a fetish of mine. The name comes from the Gort Cloud. This is an astronomical body that circulates around our solar system, but far, far beyond the orbit of Neptune. And it's basically made up of dust. Each particle of dust is separated by miles. So while it's thin and we really can't see it and we can't really measure it, we know that it has a mass greater than all the planets and the sun combined. And this is the place where comets are born. So if one of the children of the Gort Cloud were to hit our planet, we would have a very bad day. It would have a huge impact. So it's massive, it's invisible, it has a big impact, like the Gort Cloud. I like to refer to this as the people's media. We have traditional media, and then we have, let's call it the green people's media. It's essentially a free media, a way to get exposure and develop awareness, find partners, etc. Now, one of the things that has helped propel this has been the advent of social media and the so-called green web. The Gort Cloud is not 100% dependent on the internet. In fact, a lot of the connections are made people to people, like in environments like this. But as the green community has grown exponentially over the last 10 years, it's become harder and harder and harder to meet all the various people that are out there. And this is where social media and the green web have come in. So this is kind of an aspect of the Gort Cloud, a kind of facilitator. So over here, I've listed just a few of the more commonly understood social media devices. Blogs, through Blogger and Typepad and WordPress. We've got internet forums. These are the old-style bulletins, internet bulletins that have been blasted up to the modern age. Microblogs, of course, the most famous of which is Twitter. Social networks like Facebook, MySpace, LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a favorite of mine. I've made a lot of friends and partners there. There are aggregators. There are event notification sites like Upcoming and Eventful. There's knowledge collaboration, the so-called wikis. And, of course, the most famous is Wikipedia. There are bookmarking sites, Delicious, Stumbled Upon. Even if you're not real familiar with things, you've seen them. You've seen them all over the sites that you visit. News sharing, Dig, Mix, Reddit. There's opinion sharing like ePinions, Yelp. Yelp is a good one. That's a good way to, if somebody Yelps, your product and more people Yelp it and it gets around, it's one of the major things that got Spencer Brown's earth-friendly eco-friendly moving option going. There are photo sharing, Flickr, Zoomer, PhotoBucket, video sharing, YouTube, of course, Vimeo, which is a newer one. Live casting, Skype is in this business now. And then we have, all the, the email blasts, and then we've got services that will manage the servers for those like Constant Contact. So all of this is the social media, and over on the other side are the aspects of the green web that have been made possible by these devices. So we've got green browsers like Flock and Good Search and EcoSearch. We've got green directories. Lots of companies are getting involved in eco webinars. One of the more famous is EnviroWise. We've got green widgets, green networks, mixers like Eco Tuesday. That's where you get together, have drinks with people in your area and share ideas. Podcasts. Lots of companies do podcasts. Some of the best are from Tree Hunger and Grist. There are feeds. There are green tips like Ideal Bite and green tips from Sierra Club and National Geographic's Green Guide. People using Twitter, green tweets, green video feeds, eco marketing platforms. This is a new thing. Brickfish is one of the pioneers in this. This is a really interesting way to start building an online, environmentally sensitive marketing plan. There's IS, Live Paths for crowdsourcing, and there are green content syndication sites. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of what some of these things that maybe you're not all that familiar with are, but as you start to drill into this, these are all tools that you can use to build your own little miniature Gort Cloud. All of this ideally produces green viral marketing. It's I told, she told, they told, 50 tell 100, and 100 tell 1,000, and it spreads exponentially. One of the examples that I'd like to tell you about is the example of G diapers. How many people have heard of G diapers? 3, 4, 5 people? Well, here's a really interesting company. They've been around for 2 years, a little less than 2 years. It's an Australian guy and his American wife, and they had kids when they were living in Australia. They have since moved to Portland. And they got concerned about what they were going to do with the diapers. So they did the whole research that every parent goes through. Do I get cloth diapers and pay a service to pick them up and wash them, or do I buy Huggies and Pampers and throw them in the landfill? And they started researching this thing, and they connected with a woman who was living in New Zealand who was a scientist. And she had been looking into 2 products, one that had been developed for the oil industry and one that had been developed for NASA. One of them is this polymer product that's highly absorbent. You can take a teaspoon of it and pour in about a quart of water, and it'll absorb it and make it perfectly dry into a powder. This was put in astronauts' diapers so that when they were out doing their spacewalks, they wouldn't have an accident. The other thing was a byproduct of the paper pulp business that produced this kind of starchy material that the oil industry was using to throw on oil spills, out in the ocean to absorb the oil. So she figured out a way to put these 2 things together and create a disposable diaper that you could actually put down the toilet and it wouldn't clog up the pipes. So they decided, well, we're going to move to Portland. So they moved to Portland. They connected with the green community up there. They found investors. They found graphic designers. They found people who helped them with the name, helped them build websites. Somebody happened to know William McDonough of the Cradle to Cradle book, and William McDonough got involved, and he agreed to test the product and certify it, to give it Cradle to Cradle certification, which they got. And then they went to various city sewage treatment departments, sewer departments, and commissioned them to test the product to see if it actually would make it through the system, wouldn't cause pollution through cities' sanitation system. So they got all these tests done, and they started a little pilot project of producing small quantities of these things and then going to very, very small organic food stores and selling to a very small audience. And one by one, the green bloggers in the Gort Cloud started hearing about it. The Berkeley Parenting Association heard about it. Eco Moms heard about it. GRIST, Environmental Network, Tree Hugger, all started picking up this story about this so-called flushable diaper. Well, just about that time, Julia Roberts had just had a baby, and she was about to be interviewed by Vanity Fair. This is last November. She was reading her internet connections and heard about this thing, picked up the phone, called them up in Portland and said, "Hi, this is Julia Roberts. I'd like to try the product." They sent the products down to her. She tried it out. She loved it. And if anybody's read that article, she was on the cover of Vanity Fair in November last year. She spends most of the time talking about environmental issues and the promise of these diapers. So at that point, everything just exploded. So here's a company that went from non-traditional green web, Gort Cloud, green community, and then from that base went out to traditional media, Vanity Fair, and then grew awareness, for their product. So now this stuff is everywhere. It's in Whole Foods. I understand that they're trying to do deals with other kinds of major retailers. So can you imagine when the diaper industry is completely tied up by gigantic firms like Procter & Gamble, Huggies, Pampers? They control 99% of the business. How a little upstart making a flushable diaper could get on the market. You can do this. And how much did they spend? Very little. Very little. So, seeding the Gort Cloud, everybody has to adapt and change, and that's what I've done. I've taken my business, which was traditional packaging, design, logo design, naming, positioning, brand positioning business, and I now offer a service where I'll put storytelling and messages and claims together and then go out and help my customers seed this Gort Cloud with truth and with transparency. So it's a kind of new way for me to shed my old persona as a propagandist, and now I'm a rainmaker. So one last thing. I'm going to take questions at the end, and already before I started this presentation, people were asking me questions about various aspects of this, so I really want to spend some time with you if you have some time to ask some questions. But I want to talk to you about one other thing, which is called network visualization. Anybody heard of this, network visualization? The Gort Cloud is essentially invisible. I did a chart to make something invisible visible. But people who are involved in advanced research in social networks have been trying to figure out how you can make these viral networks visible to people. So I commissioned one of these, they're called software artists. He's an engineer and an artist, a guy named Barak Arikhan. He's a graduate of the MIT Media Lab. And I commissioned him to create a scenario where a hypothetical product was picked up by Tree Hugger and then virally spread through the network. And I'll play this for you. It runs a little long, so I might clip it off partway through. But you get an idea how network visualization works. Now you might be asking yourself, what are you looking at? Is it an animation? It's not an animation. This is a piece of software that's creating a randomized program simulating what might happen with these different kinds of connections. So every time we run this on the computer, it comes out different. So my wife says that it looks like virus growing in a petri dish. It sort of is. The Gort Cloud can be an amazing resource for getting the word out. If you've got a smart, sharp product and a great story, and your business is transparent, and you got to have a little bit of P.T. Barnum going through your blood to get into this business. Remember, this is the toughest business in the world. My wife's a fashion designer. My mom was a fashion designer. So I know how difficult this business is. But if you can survive and you've got that P.T. Barnum spirit in you, and you can get out there and propel yourself, then you'll find willing partners inside this this Gort Cloud. Anything else? Okay. I want to thank you for coming.